Shalom, everyone, and today we're studying Parashat Terumah, the book of Exodus, chapter 25. Parashat Terumah speaks about the building of the tabernacle. The tabernacle was the um, portable temple the Israelites had in the desert. They started to build it just after Moses came down from the mount a second time. And they carried the tabernacle in the desert for 40 years. They brought it in the promised land with Joshua. The tabernacle was in Shechem, Nablus, and then in Shiloh, north of Jerusalem. And finally, it moved to Jerusalem in the time of King David. And King Solomon finally built the temple instead of the tabernacle. He used the different utensils and devices being used in the tabernacle, but the structure was the first time a real building. So it took about 480 years that the tabernacle was the main structure for the holy work, and then it was replaced with the temple in Jerusalem. That lasted for more than 400 years. 70 years later, after it was destroyed, it was rebuilt for another more than 400 years. And then it was destroyed by the Romans, the year 70. And the history shows that we didn't have a temple since then. So, why do we need to talk about the construction of the tabernacle, the portable temple, right now, while to remind everyone we're still in the midst of Mount Sinai revelation? Moses did not come down from the mount yet with the two tablets. This is really part of the revelation. Why building a tabernacle is so important, especially nowadays when we don't have holy temples. We have local house of prayer in different religions. In Judaism, we have a synagogue, but we don't have a temple for so many years. Why is it so important to talk about the temple, and why Parashat Terumah, which in the Zohar, it's a whole volume by itself, Parashat Terumah, uh, a lot of pages in the Zohar that I have. It's 300 pages just for Parashat Terumah. What's so significant about it? And we know, I think I spoke about it many times, when you read the spiritual manuscripts of Isaac Newton, he talks a lot about Parashat Terumah, and he says that all the rules of physics, all the equations, the rules, the secrets of physics are encoded in Parashat Terumah, especially in the story of the building of the tabernacle. These manuscripts are treasured in the Israeli National Library, and it's very simple. You can read those manuscripts if you go to the Israel National Library site, and you in the search you put Isaac Newton's manuscripts, and you can read. And he writes a lot of amazing stuff over there. You can see him writing fluent Hebrew, talking about the Zohar, talking about Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Akiva. Uh, he was very much into it. But these manuscripts could not find their way into the scientific institutions in England. They were not, they didn't want to have it there, too explosive. So it found itself to the holy city of Jerusalem. So, what is the story? Why is it? And again, let me give the background. Mount Sinai revelation is the Parashat Yitro. God is revealing to the nation, first time, what we call the Eser Hadibrot, the 10 utterances, known by mistake as the 10 commandments. It doesn't say commandments anywhere. It's only in the foreign translations. Of course, this is not a translation. This is a biased interpretation. Why? Because the Zohar says very clearly what the Torah has is 613 advices for every person to improve and elevate and complete his or her soul. So we are talking about advices and not commandments. And we're going to talk about it again and again. So the story of the revelation continues. Last week, first of all, we have the what we call the 10 utterances, Eser Dibrot, and but the manifestation or the um, going into details, itemizing of the 10 utterances is divided into Parashat Mishpatim, we just read last week, and Parashat Mishpatim, laws. It's about the laws between a person and another person, uh, the laws that govern the behavior of an organized, complete human society. And the main rule over there is to realize that it's not a legal thing that human beings decide about and interpret. We are talking about cosmic rules of cause and effect that if you're not following properly, if you're not following these rules properly, you have to incarnate again and again and again till you complete your soul. So being honest, having integrity in your relationships with other people is an essential rule in completing your spiritual journey. And therefore, there is no separation between your soul journey and your behavior on daily life. Although in ancient times, remember when that was being given, the people who declared themselves as holy, the priests and the kings who were also declared themselves divine and even deities, they robbed the people. And the special thing that happened on Mount Sinai is that nobody is above the law. And therefore, we have to understand that there is a divine uh, power that guides our lives. Otherwise, you will never have a just society because the moment you get the divine power out of society, then people start to interpret the law according to their own uh, selfish agenda because whoever says he's not selfish, he will be lying about other things too. So the idea that you have an awareness that there is something eternal about the laws, not just cosmic laws, not just the laws of physics, but also the laws of justice in the behavior among people. And we spoke about it last week a lot. That's Parashat Mishpatim. So why Parashat Terumah is following that, which is also so essential because it's part of Mount Sinai revelation. And here comes another concept that we really have to remember. I'll read a text from the Zohar. It's a little bit complicated. I try to make it to simplify, but still, it's a magical paragraph from the Zohar. Uh, and it starts in on verse 20 in the Zohar Hasulam commentary of Rabbi Ashlag. I'll read first the original Aramaic. פתח רבי שמעון ואמר, Rabbi Shimon opened and said, הפריון עשה לו המלך שלמה מעצי הלבנון. This is from the Song of Songs, chapter 3, verse 9. King Solomon made himself a canopy from the trees of the Lebanon. Okay, this is where it's starting from. היקרא האוקים נא ויתמר. אבל הפריון דה היכלה לטאטה, דיוק הגבנה דיכלה אילאה. וקודשה בריחו קרא לי גינתה דעדן. דיהון נטה לי להנאתי. וכיסופה דילי להשתעשעה בי גו אינו נשמתין דצדיקיה, ותמן כולו קיימין ושימין בגבי. אינו נשמתין דלייטלון גופה ביה עלמא, כולו סלקין ומתעטרן כתמן. ואיתלון דוכתין למחמי להתענגה גוגי נוגה, אילאה דיקרי נועם אדוני. ותמן התמליין מכל כיסופין דנערי דפרסמונה דחיה. Okay, so this paragraph is saying, it's based on that verse, King Solomon made himself a canopy, and we learned. And he's saying, what's a canopy? Or in Hebrew, apirion. And this is the lower shrine, Sfirat Malchut, which is kind of, or it's like in a reference to the upper shrine. So the Zohar is saying there are two shrines. There's an upper shrine and a lower shrine. והקדוש ברוך הוא קרא אותו גן עדן, and God called the upper shrine the Garden of Eden. שנטע אותו להנאתו, and God planted the Garden of Eden for pleasure. והשתוקקותו להשתעשע בו עם נשמות הצדיקים. And God wants to have fun with the souls of the righteous in the Garden of Eden. שם עומדות כולנו רשומות בתוכו. And all the souls of the righteous are there, inscripted over there in the Garden of Eden. אלו הנשמות שאין להם גוף בעולם הזה, עולות כולן מתעטות שם. Those souls who do not have a body in the physical dimension, they are there in the upper shrine in the Garden of Eden. ויש להם מקומות לראות, להתענג בעונג העליון הנקרא נועם השם. And what they do over there is to see, is to connect, and to especially experience pleasure. The supreme pleasure that is called Noam. Noam is the kind of pleasure that is coming from the upper world. Then the Noam Adonai, the pleasure of God. ושם מתמלאות מכל התענוגים, and all the souls are being fulfilled with that pleasure, של נהרי אפרסמון הטהור. And this pleasure is also called the rivers of pure persimmon. And then he continues. What is persimmon? Verse 21. Da heichala ilat miragniza. Persimmon is the upper shrine that is hidden, which means our physical eyes and physical logic is, for us, it is hidden and encoded because we have no idea how to experience, understand, or any way to describe, we don't have the senses and the logic to understand how it is in the upper shrine. So that's the upper shrine, which is covered and treasured from us, from living creatures in the physical dimension. While apirion, the canopy, that's a lower shrine. So we have Afarsemon, that's the Zohar name. Afarsemon, this is the upper shrine. Apirion, this is the lower shrine. Okay, and like they are one representing or mirroring the other. And the Zohar goes into a long discussion. I don't want to, because it will be very hard to understand. But basically, what is the Zohar saying? I want to make it simple. The two kind of dimensions, one is the upper Garden of Eden and one is the lower garden. And they reflect each other they connect to each other. The upper one is sending rivers of spiritual light and pleasure into the lower one. The lower one is revealing that light, that spiritual energy and positive frequencies that flow from the upper. That's why the Zohar is using the word river. Okay, so what's in it for us? And the answer is as follows. Let me explain this very important concept. Uh, there's another Zohar to help us get this idea. Okay, let us skip to verse 263. And he's speaking about, he's giving there, the Zohar is giving like a tale. It's like a king that was ruling his nation. However, the queen was somewhere else. And the king would go on, the queen did not live with the king. כל זמן שהמלכה לא הייתה עם המלך, אין העם קובע שישאר אצלם. As long as the queen is not living with the king, the nation is not sure that the king is going to stay with them. והם אינם יושבים לבטח, and because of that, there's a kind of uncertainty. Is the king staying? Is not staying? When there is a doubt about the stability of the government, nothing works properly. כיוון שבאה המלכה, שמחים כל העם ויושבים לבטח. But when the queen is coming and she's settling in the palace together with the king, the people are sure right now, certain, and they feel much safer. Now they know the government is settled down. So, the same thing with the nation of Israel. כך בתחילה, אף על פי שהקדוש ברוך הוא עשה להם ניסים ואותות על ידי משה. Although God made so many miracles to the people through Moses, 10 plagues, the journey in the desert, the revelation of Mount Sinai, everything was amazing. Amazing. However, people would say this is so much, so great, so much beyond, but that could leave us any moment because we're humans, we're flesh and blood. This is too much. How do we know the connection to the upper king is eternal, is stable? How do we know we're not going to wake up one morning and realize it was just an amazing dream and it's over and we're back to the regular life? כיוון שאמר הקדוש ברוך הוא ויקחו לי תרומה ונתתי משכני בתוכם, מיד קבעו כולם שהקדוש ברוך הוא יהיה עמהם. The moment God says, and that's the name of the parasha, take contribution, take Terumah for me and build me a temple. And then it continues with this amazing verse 8, chapter 25 in Exodus, verse 8. ועשו לי מקדש, they'll make me a temple, ושכנתי בתוכם, and I will dwell in their midst. Which means only when they were ordered to build a temple, Mikdash. I don't know what's the connection between the word temple and Mikdash, but the word Mikdash is a place, the way the word is structured in Hebrew is a place that is dedicated for holiness. This is the meaning of the word Mikdash in Hebrew, a place dedicated for holiness, okay, for sacredness. The moment they realize now they have a way to create with their own actions, with their own fingers, with their own effort, to create a place, a shrine. Again, uh, English is not made for that. Even the other word, there is mikdash and there is heichal. Heichal is a shrine. Maybe it's connected to Hebrew because the word, when you say in Hebrew that there's a holiness, the Shekhinah dwells, the word to dwell in Hebrew is shoreh. Maybe shrine is coming from that, I don't know. But where the Heichal means the vessel in which the Holy Spirit can dwell into. That's the meaning in Hebrew. Okay, so you have Mikdash, you have Heichal. All of them are talking about something very distinct. We're talking about the upper shrine and the lower shrine. We're talking about the metaphysical entity that is dwelling inside a physical cover, a physical vessel. This is very, very important because this is trying to kind of formulate the relationships between the upper world and the lower world. Same thing, there's a soul. The soul dwells in a physical body, and there is a very strong connection between the soul and the body because without the soul, the body is lifeless. Now, however, the body needs to be aware, uplifted, adjusted to the soul in a way so the two uh, can be communicating with each other without having fight. Why? Because the soul is coming from the upper world, the body is coming from the lower world. They do not speak the same language. The main journey in a human life is to train and teach the body to be aware of the soul that without it, it's not alive. Why is it so important? Because happiness, real true happiness, real contentment, real pleasure that we spoke about before is not physical, it's godly. The physical one, it comes and it goes, and always you have the morning after. You know, if you're trying to get high, but you irritate just the physical aspect, like high sugar, a lot of alcohol, any kind of those things that we know as human beings, if you do that, you can create a burst of pleasure. Okay? How do you know it's not the real pleasure? It doesn't linger. It's very short-lived. While when we are talking about the real pleasure that is coming from the upper shrine, from the upper dimension, that pleasure lingers. Not just it lingers, there's a buildup. How do we know? The physical pleasure, there's a very important rule that applies to it. What is more is less. The more sweets you eat, the less you enjoy it, till you get sick. Could be also about other foods, you know. You can enjoy fatty food. Okay? The more you enjoy, the less uh, the joy lingers. Till finally your body can't stand it anymore. Any other, like drugs and alcohol, whatever, the more, the less. While a spiritual pleasure that flows from the upper dimension, the more is more. The more you enjoy from it, the more you connect to it, the more you you can direct the flow of it through you, how do you know you really made it? Your ability to direct those rivers of joy and pleasure through yourself is just being enhanced the more you train. So it is known that people who train to connect to upper pleasure through meditation, prayer, study, all those exercises of purification and sanctification of the body till the body starts to basically have the same vibration as the soul, then the more pleasure you experience, the more pleasure you can experience, which means you just intensify your ability to experience pleasure, and it's just getting better and better and better. So this is a very important thing to realize, which means if I choose, and that's what human beings are made of, we are creatures of pleasure. If I choose pleasure, I have to realize there are two kinds of pleasure. One kind is the physical elusive one, which the law for it is the more is less. So why taking that direction? Because it's cheaper in the beginning. It's easier. You know, a lot of sugar and all kinds of stuff like this. Everybody knows the drill. However, it is, after a lot of sugar, your insulin goes up and then you have a drop. What can you do? You cannot linger that pleasure. However, the spiritual pleasure, that needs a lot of work. Not that much as you think. You have to train yourself. You have to basically calibrate your thoughts, your body, so it can vibrate in that frequency of the higher plane, the higher shrine. So this is what this parasha is about. It is essential for our existence. The fact that a human being, a mortal human being, which looks like a creature of only physical dimension, has to develop his ability to communicate with the divine, with the godly, with that dimension that is hidden and covered. However, you were created to communicate with that dimension. This is the main idea of this parasha. And therefore, we need a temple. We need a Mikdash, which is a better word. What is the Mikdash? The Mikdash is as we human beings, by our own physical actions, with the right intention and saying the right words, we can create a sacred place, Mikdash. We can create a union between the upper temple, the upper Mikdash, and the lower Mikdash. And by doing that, we unite the two worlds. However, when we live a life of total denial of the upper dimension, we create a life that is orphaned, that is lonely, that is disconnected, that is empty, that is shallow, that is very, very mean because it's full of suffering. Mean people are aching people. The more pleasure we experience, spiritual pleasure, the more love we can harbor inside ourselves, and we cannot not share it with others. So that's exactly that verse we just said, chapter 25, verse 8. Ve'asuli mikdash, when we basically connect ourselves to that great idea that human beings and mortals, they are occupied in that idea of building a Mikdash, a holy sanctuary, a sacred place, that sacred place will connect the above and below. And that Mikdash, what even more important, has a universal dimension. That Mikdash is not just, what does it mean it's connecting the upper and the lower? What does it mean it's connecting the upper heaven with the lower world? It is also connecting all of humanity together. Of course, the tabernacle, when it was built, it had less power than when it was built by King Solomon. How do we know? If you will read all the prophecies of Isaiah and Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and all the greatest prophets about the future time when humanity is going to reach an harmonious state, the prophecies are not talking about rebuilding the tabernacle. All of them are talking about rebuilding the temple in the Mikdash in Jerusalem. Because we have to understand, this world is a world of evolution. It took how many years from Abraham till King Solomon building the temple in Jerusalem? Close to 1,000 years. It was Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and then exile in Egypt, and then coming out of Egypt, 40 years in the desert, and then 440 years in the Holy Land, the Promised Land, till the 12 tribes are building themselves as a nation, until they get together and build together a temple that is a message, a shrine, not just for the Israelite nation, but it's built for the whole of humanity. Why in Jerusalem? Because Jerusalem, and especially the place that King David chose to build the temple, this is the place that the upper world touches the lower world. This is the place that two universes unite, which means it's a portal, the most powerful, the greatest portal on this planet. How do I know? I think about 4 billion people think like this, even more than 4 billion people, as part of their religious tradition. I think that more than that. So, who am I to argue with 4 billion people? If in history, I don't care about the historical background, the political background, the religious background, and all of that, it doesn't matter. The fact that we have more than half of humanity believing that the place to connect between this physical world and to go up to the upper world is Jerusalem. So we know that this is the place. There is this connection. Okay? What does that connection mean? It means that there is a connection. And it means that when we're talking about a mikdash, it's a physical place that a physical human being can be part of its construction. However, something that is not physical will dwell into it. Every human couple that had a child created something like this. Here you have two human beings. They do a physical action, okay? They get together, and then there's a physical connection, and the physical connection creates a physical connection between a sperm cell and an egg cell. And when these two unite, they create something, a fertilized egg, and then a fetus, that the spiritual divine presence dwells into it. What's the difference? The act of conceiving a child is an act that, as it says in many places, there are three partners in the creation of a human being: his father, his mother, and God. Okay? Here, when we build a temple, there are three partners. Okay? One partner is the people that build it, and the other partner is God. Without God concept, agreement, okay, consent, participation, it will be just an empty building. And people build buildings, not all of them know how to build a sacred building. Parashat Terumah is the main text of how a human action can create a shrine for a godly, divine power. Why do we need that? Because if a human life is not built around that concept, it's not a life. It's a very aching, torturous journey of disappointment and pain till either you give up or you find the way to connect to spiritual understanding. What is spiritual understanding? The spiritual understanding of the Torah is that the divine must dwell in the mundane, in the physical. It's not two universes. We humans have the power to marry the two realities together. The Mikdash is the marriage point. And that's why where it says, when the tabernacle is finished, is complete, it says very clearly, ויהי ביום כלות משה, you can find it in the book of Numbers, chapter 7, in the day that Moses completed the tabernacle. The word kalot Moshe means completed, but if you read Hebrew, the word can be read also as kalat Moshe, Moses' bride. The bride, the queen, the groom. The bride is the temple, the groom is God. There's always that connection, the male and female, light and vessel, soul and body. This concept is so powerful, is so important because if your life does not, if it's not a major axis for your life, you're missing the main point. And then you don't understand why is it that I'm not lucky? And as I explained many times, in Hebrew, there's no word for luck, good luck or fortune. The word is mazal, which is coming from the letters nun, zain, lamed, flow of liquid, which means when the rivers of persimmon, of the higher pleasure and the higher light, flow into your life, it looks like you're lucky, but it's not a matter of throwing dice. Okay? Like the argument between Niels Bohr and Einstein. The world is not about throwing dice. It's very precise. You have to make the move from below, so God will make the move from above. What's the move you make from below? First of all, the awareness, I am a vessel. I am an empty shell. I will be fulfilled when I sanctify myself. Makdish, sanctify myself to be a mikdash, a sacred space for the divine spirit. This is the focal point of human life. If you don't think like this, if you're not, your brain is not wired around this, you won't be lucky because there's not going to be enough flow. You won't be in the zone, ever in the zone as a lasting existence because you're not really wired properly for the right frequency as a vessel for a divine light. The awareness of this dichotomy, of this like two-dimensional world is crucial for human happiness and fulfillment. And by the way, when King Solomon is building, establishing, or inaugurating his Mikdash, his prayer says this should be a place to reveal light, to reveal peace, to reveal all the bliss. And he adds, and also the foreigner who comes from faraway country, listen to his prayer. Okay, because the Mikdash is not supposed to serve only the Israelite nation. The Mikdash was built from the beginning to serve the whole of humanity, the whole planet. So we'll read another verse to emphasize that. Okay, we'll continue the same article. Okay, that's verse 267 in the Sulam commentary. ולעולם נמשכת השכינה ונכנסת תוך סוד הגוף. And it's going to be forever, eternally, that the Shekhinah, again, the Shekhinah means the one who dwells. Okay, so there is the dweller, which is the creator, which we cannot see, but we can feel when that light dwells in the physical dimension. Then it's called Shekhinah. ונכנסת תוך סוד הגוף, and it comes and enters into the secret of the body, which is the tabernacle, המשכן, שישרה המוח תוך הקליפה. So the moach, the internal, the brain, always the brain dwells within the skull. The brain is soft. It doesn't have a form so much because it's very soft. However, what gives it a form, what gives it a structure is the skull, which is hard, which is like kind of the same comparison between the spiritual power. You can't see it. You need a physical, tangible vessel to reveal it through. You need a physical action of charity, love, giving, to manifest an emotion of giving and loving and caring. שהמשכן וכליו, the tabernacle and its utensils, הם כמו קליפה אל השכינה. It's like the shell that contains the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah is a amorphic spirit. It needs a physical shell to dwell in so it can manifest. The same way the human soul can manifest only through a physical body. As a human soul, you want to help somebody. If you don't have a body, you cannot help anyone. I had this a story I heard from a friend many, many years ago. That person was a pilot in the Israeli Air Force. And he was heavily wounded over Egypt. He was lying in the hospital for a long, long time, for many, many days. The pain was so terrible. He basically was most of the time out of his body. That's how he tells. He was like a soul traveling, and once in a while he would come to visit his body because it was too painful. And one day he was just walking around the hospital, and he saw a mother walking with a child. And the child was very kind of full of energy. It was running around, jumping and jumping and running around. And then the child, just as jumping and running, he ran to the street. and the car was just coming fast. The driver could not stop, and he hit the child. Our friend wanted to save the child. He ran to the child to hold him, but he was just a soul. He could not save the child because he did not have a body. At that moment, he realized that if he wants to make a difference, he needs the body. And he made a decision to get well. He went back into his body. And with a lot of willpower, he got well, healed, and went back to flying. Okay, so you need to want to have a body, because the only way you can do good with others is by operating a physical body. It's not enough to have great thoughts. You need also great deeds. You know what they say, it's not a Jewish saying, but it says the road to hell is paved with good intentions. If it was a Jewish saying, I say it will be the road to hell, to heaven is paved with good intentions, followed by good deeds. So that's how it's going to work. So what we're saying is, ורוח הקודש הזה, דהיינו השכינה, נעשה בתוך הגוף שיכלול בתוכו רוח אחר עליון דק המאיר. The Shekhinah needs a physical body to manifest through. You need a physical action. That could be Mikdash. A synagogue is called also Mikdash Me'at, a little temple, a diminished temple. But still, it's built as a desecrated, as a sanctified physical entity. It needs to have walls, it needs to have a physical roof, and so on and so forth. The same thing when we learn it many times, you have to treat your house as your home, as a temple. So I say it every year again. They say, but the British home is his castle. If you understand Parashah Terumah, the Jewish home is his temple. So when you make Shabbat dinner, you are the high priest. Okay, you have the menorah, it's the Shabbat candles. You have the bread, it's a Shabbat bread in the temple. It's the same thing. Just have them in mind that when you set up the table for Shabbat, you're basically setting up the table in the temple, your temple, for the Shekhinah to dwell on your own personal temple, and you are your own high priest. So what's the meaning? How is that connected to the name of the Parashat Terumah? So I explained it many times, so I'll do it shortly because you can find it in previous years' lectures. The word Terumah in Hebrew is being used in the context of contribution. However, it doesn't mean contribution. It means it being used in the context. The word Terumah really means in Hebrew, says the Zohar, tarom hay, raise the hay. Hay is the letter that symbolizes, usually in the magical study of the Hebrew letters, symbolizes the Malchut, this world, the manifestation, okay? The letter Hey. The sanctified letter Hey is also the number 5. That's where the Chamsa came from, the hand with the 5 fingers. It came from the Exodus when the Israelites painted with blood the letter Hey on their door, on the door. Okay? Now, Hey in Hebrew means 5 also. It's a number. So that became into the 5 fingers of the hand. There are more reasons, but the simplistic reason. So for the symbol of sanctified protection. Later on, it was borrowed by other cultures, as we know today. Now, when we say terumah, it means that when we use our physical body, our physical time, which is a physical dimension, a physical money, a physical energy, whatever that we own whatever resource we have in the physical dimension, and we use it in order to share, help, care, contribute. We basically, when we do it with the idea to emulate God's light, that is the giver, we basically elevate the frequency of the hay, which is our body, our money, our livelihood, our household, everything that we can own physically, legally in this physical world. When we use it for the embetterment of the world by helping others, physically, spiritually, doesn't matter, we basically raise the frequency of whatever we use, our money, our house, our time, whatever we've got, our body. That's why the meaning of the word terumah is tarom hay, raise the hay, which means as human beings, what we got on Mount Sinai, that we were born mortals, we are born limited, we are born very, very grounded. However, as our life going by, we can learn, we're supposed to learn how to raise the frequency of everything we touch, everything we own, time, space, money, whatever we can perceive with our senses and we own legally. Our job, our calling is to raise that frequency by using it as a vessel, as a tool to have the Shekhinah dwell on it. How? When we have the consciousness to unite the two worlds. What's the easiest way to raise your consciousness is when you give. When you give unconditionally, when you give by knowing that the only way, the easiest way to connect to God's light, to the frequency of the divine, is to give with unconditional love. And that is the secret of this parasha. This is the secret that will basically redeem humanity from its terrible pains and suffering. We have to learn it carefully, dwell on it, think, contemplate on it, and apply it in our everyday life. That's the main condition for redemption. Thank you.